monsters lived in closets and under your bed. I never knew they could be right next to you. Karma will get him in the end.
Powerful words from a hurting family, words directed toward the man responsible for killing their daughter as he learned his fate in court. Good evening, I'm Laura Lee.
And I'm Dan Wolf. Thanks for joining us. It was the first homicide in the city of Duluth this year.
And tonight, the Duluth man who killed his ex-girlfriend will spend the next 2 decades in prison. The judge handed down that sentence this morning to 25-year-old Dale Howard in front of a courtroom filled with Alyssa Volan's loved ones. Howard pleaded guilty to killing the 27-year-old in a Duluth apartment back in March, and just 2 weeks after he was arrested for her assaulting her, an assault that landed him a do not contact order, which was in place the time of Volan's death.
Northern News Now's Isabella Zander was in the courtroom today and has more on the toll Volan's death has taken on her loved ones.
Alyssa Volan was just 27 years old when she was killed in an act of domestic violence, a crime Dale Howard was sentenced to 20 years for on Monday.
Alyssa would have loved Dale forever through good and bad because that was the person she was. But he chose when her forever would end.
After a walk on the lake walk Saturday to honor her life, Alyssa's friends and family flocked the courtroom on the cool October morning, not just to hear Howard's fate, but to share the impact her death has had.
I always thought monsters lived in closets and under your bed. I never knew they could be right next to you. Karma will get him in the end.
Alyssa's mom, Carrie, was one of those who prepared a statement, yet found herself lost for words. Everyone knew that her daughter was her world, including Alyssa's aunt, Sherry, who read a statement on behalf of Alyssa's grandpa.
Nothing is the same and nothing ever will be. I pray daily for her. I wake up thinking about her and fall asleep thinking about her.
Her grandpa also wrote he wished Alyssa would have opened up about the domestic abuse she was facing, something Howard said in court Monday he regrets.
The world's greatest treasure is gone. For that, I'm sorry.
Now, all Alyssa's loved ones are trying to move forward and keep their heads up high, the way they say Alyssa always used to do. In Duluth, Isabella Zadra, Northern News Now.
Isabella, thank you. At the time of her death, Alyssa was the first homicide victim in Duluth and the 6th victim of domestic abuse homicide in Minnesota this year. If you or someone you know is involved in a domestic violence situation, you can find a list of resources right now on our website.